My wife Rosie was a very passionate person. That's what I loved about her. She was a musician, and she used her singing as a way to let out all her feelings. I played bass for her band, and I was more technically skilled than her, but I didn't have the raw emotions that she did. That kind of summed up our relationship. I was the stable one with a steady rhythm, and she was the wild one who made everything exciting. It was a great dynamic. At least, I thought it was. Then one day, I met a guy named David at one of our concerts. Seemingly a great guy, very friendly. He helped me load up my equipment into my truck, and we really hit it off. While Rosie was drinking with her bandmates, David and I really bonded. He quickly became my best friend. He started hanging out at our house a lot. Rosie liked him too, but I didn't know how much she liked him until I caught them making out in her backyard. I was furious. I didn't say anything at the time. But that night, I confronted her about it. I'm so sorry. He kissed me and I should have pushed him away. I'll never see him again. She had all these excuses, blaming David for the whole drama. She said she regretted it instantly, and she was planning to tell me about it that night. I stupidly believed her. Turns out, they'd been sleeping with each other already for weeks, but I didn't know that at the time. Our anniversary was right after that, and seemingly to make sure that I knew how much she loved me, she planned this big romantic boat trip. It was a big deal for Rosie because she was terrible at planning out things. The fact that she rented out a boat and organized a big dinner for us out in the bay seemed to prove that her affair with David meant nothing. I still felt betrayed, but I knew that we'd get over it. We loved each other. It was just the two of us on the boat. Rosie had gone through a 3-hour training session so she could captain the boat herself. I was very impressed. We set sail right at sunset and we sang together as we got farther and farther from the docks. It was very romantic. Once we were miles from the shore, she kissed me. I'm sorry, sweetie. I really do love you. I thought she was apologizing for the David thing, but she was apologizing for what she was about to do, what they were about to do. Immediately, the door on the lower deck shot open and David walked out. He had a harpoon gun aimed right at me. He marched over, wrapped his free arm around Rosie's shoulder, and glared at me. What's going on? Rosie leaned her chin on David's shoulder. She had love in her eyes, love for him. Just do it, baby. That's when David fired the harpoon at me. It pierced my shoulder, sending me backwards into the water. I was bleeding, confused, splashing around in the ocean. My shoulder was throbbing, but the cold was worse. I could see the two of them hugging each other on the deck. Come on, honey, let's get out of here. I didn't see them after that. Seconds later, the engine turned on. They were going to leave me here to drown. My own wife would rather kill me than just ask for a divorce. It's not like either of us had any money. I wasn't panicking, though. I was too angry to panic. I would not let them get away with this. Ignoring the pain, I swam to the edge of the boat and grabbed onto a rope that was hanging from the side. As the boat headed back toward shore, I held on. 10 minutes. That's how long it took to get back to the dock. During that time, I almost lost my grip over and over, but I refused to let go. I kept kicking my legs and telling myself I was going to survive. I heard their voices on the deck as they tied off the boat and got off. I couldn't make out their exact words, but it sounded like they were practicing what to say when they reported me missing. They were laughing too. I could hear that part clearly. I watched them run across the dock and onto the beach. Rosie's hair was wild, and I could hear her screaming. Help! Someone call the police! My husband fell overboard! I stayed in the water and watched a crowd of people gather around Rosie and David. David tried to look upset, but he wasn't a very good actor. Rosie, meanwhile, was giving the performance of her life. A policeman appeared in the crowd and told her that everything would be okay. He got her to calm down and tell him the whole story. She must have practiced it beforehand, because she sounded very believable. She told him that I had drank too much and fell off the deck. They looked everywhere but couldn't find me. And because they didn't have their phones, they had to race back to shore to get help. The policeman fell for it. He contacted the Coast Guard and wrapped her in a hug to calm her down. And while she was crying in his arms, I stepped out of the water with the harpoon wound in my shoulder and a smile on my face. David and Rosie didn't see me walk toward them, but the cop did. "Excuse me, officer. I need an ambulance. These assholes shot me with the harpoon." So I'm divorced now. I kept the band together and took on the lead vocals now that Rosie's in jail. I'm a much more confident person now. I'm finally able to live my life to the fullest. Plus, I have a really cool scar on my shoulder.
I still don't know how to tell this story without sounding like the biggest idiot in Chicago, but here goes. Her name was Victoria, but she told me on the first date to call her Wiki, like the website, because Victoria sounds like a princess from a country that doesn't exist anymore. She had that dry Eastern European way of saying things that made you laugh, even when you weren't sure that if it was a joke. 25, born in Krakow. Moved to the States 4 years earlier on some work visa that kept getting extended. She still flew back to Poland every couple of months to remember who I am, she said. Dark hair, green eyes that looked like they had seen some and a little scar on her upper lip that she claimed was from a childhood sledding accident. I believed her. I believed a lot of things back then. We matched on Bumble in late May. First message from her was, "You look like you know how to grill meat. Prove me wrong." I sent back a picture of the ribeyes that I'd done the week before. She replied, "Good. I only date men who can feed me." I laughed out loud in my kitchen. First date was simple because I didn't want to scare her off. Walk around Humboldt Park, grab drinks at that tavern on North Avenue with the patio, and then walk some more once the sun went down. It was 95 degrees and humid as hell. We talked about everything. Her dad, who still lived in Poland and sent her passive-aggressive texts in all caps. My mom, who kept asking when I was going to settle down and stop wasting my good years. The fact that neither of us believed in astrology, but we both secretly checked our horoscopes when we were drunk. By 10 o'clock, we were sitting on a bench by the lagoon, fireflies doing their thing. She leaned over and said, "I don't usually do this, but you're not a psycho, right?" "Define psycho," I said. She laughed, grabbed my hand, and pulled me towards her apartment in Logan Square. Inside, she kicked off her sandals, poured us vodka from the freezer, no chaser, like civilized people, and put on some Polish reality show about rich kids in Warsaw. After 20 minutes, I leaned in. "Slow, I need slow." "Slow is good," I said, even though my heart was jackhammering. We watched 3 episodes, then 4. At 3 a.m., she yawned and said, "I'm going to bed. You can stay if you want." I blinked. On the couch? She rolled her eyes. "No, idiot. In the bed. I'm not kicking you out into the night like some movie." So I brushed my teeth with my finger and whatever toothpaste was on the sink, and then I walked into the room. She gave me this half smirk and said, "I sleep like this. You can too. Or you can be weird and keep everything on. Your choice." I was not weird. Hell no. She immediately grabbed my wrist. "Not yet," she said softly. "Just hold me." So I held her. We fell asleep like that. I woke up at 6 wondering what fresh hell I'd signed up for. That set the tone for the next 3 weeks. We saw each other almost every day. She'd text me at 2 p.m. "Come over. I made bigos and I'm bored." And I'd drop whatever I was doing. We'd cook, drink wine, dance in her kitchen to some band called Madame I'd never heard of, and then crawl into bed and just cuddle. Once she said, "In Poland, we don't smash on the third date like you animals." I laughed because by then it was like the 15th date. My friend started roasting me alive. "Dude, she's using you as a room heater," my buddy Ryan said over wings. "She's got a husband back in Krakow," said Matt. "You're the American side piece." I defended her every time. She's just traditional. Guilt or whatever. But privately, I was losing my mind. Week 2, we drove up to Wisconsin to go tubing on the Apple River. Just us, a cooler of White Claw, and 6 hours of sun. On the ride back, I finally snapped. "Wiki, talk to me. What is this? Because I'm going crazy here." She stared out the window. "What do you mean?" "Every night we're in bed together and you won't let me touch you. You say physical touch is your love language, but you flinch when I try anything. I like you a lot, but I didn't sign up for such sleepovers." She was quiet for a long time. Then, "I really like you. I'm just scared. I've been hurt before. Can you be patient?" I said yes. Of course I said yes. She reached over and held my hand the rest of the drive. That night she sent me a text. "I'm sorry I push you away. I want you. I just need to go at my speed." I stared at the message until the screen went black. Nothing changed after that. By week 4, the red flags weren't flags anymore. They were like air raid sirens. There was the time that she told me that her mom was a controlling because she wouldn't co-sign another car loan. The time she laughed about getting pulled over for DUI, but the cop was cute, so he let me go. The stack of unpaid parking tickets on her dresser like confetti. The way that she'd trash talk her best friend 1 minute and then call her my soul sister the next. The final straw was the phone incident. She texted me Saturday morning. "Want to go out tonight? Dancing? I miss your face." I made reservations at a taco place she liked, planned to take her to Late Bar where they play all 80s new wave. I was actually excited, like maybe we were turning a corner. I got to her apartment at 7. She was pacing, screaming into her iPhone in Polish. I caught the words, "Mama," and a lot of "Kurwa." When she hung up, she threw the phone on the couch. "My mother kicked me off the family plan because I'm irresponsible. Can you believe this?" "What happened?" "I was late on 1 payment. 1! She's punishing me." Well, she decided that we'd go to the T-Mobile store in person to port her number. On the way there, she explained that her mom had given her 24-hour access to the account to transfer the line. While she had access, Wiki deleted her mom's ex-boyfriend's number off the plan because he's a piece of and she shouldn't still be paying for him. Her mom found out immediately. The text came through while Wiki was showing me something on Marketplace. "I trusted you. You, Victoria. Never again." Wiki read it out loud and laughed. She's so dramatic. I felt my stomach drop. At the store, the guy behind the counter was patient, but Wiki had already deleted her eSIM in a fit of spite, so the phone was basically bricked for porting. He offered a temporary fix for $25. She lost it. $25 for this? You people are thieves! "Ma'am, I don't set the prices." "You are a stupid clown!" she screamed and stormed out, slamming the glass door so hard the whole wall shook. I stood there apologizing to the poor guy and then walked out. She was sitting on the curb smoking a cigarette that she had bummed off of a stranger. "I want to go home," she said. I drove her back in silence. When I pulled up to her building, she turned to me. I'm sorry you had to see that. I just get so angry sometimes. Yeah, I noticed. She leaned over like she was going to kiss me goodbye. I didn't lean in. She got out. That night I texted her. Hey, I think we're looking for different things. I wish you the best, seriously. Take care of yourself. She called immediately. I let it go to voicemail. 3 more calls, and then a string of texts. You're abandoning me, like everyone else. I knew you were too good to be true. F*** you for making me feel safe. I blocked her number, deleted Bumble, and drank half a bottle of Jameson on my couch while Total Eclipse of the Heart played on repeat. My friends showed up with pizza and didn't say, I told you so, even once. Which was bro code for, we love you, dumbass. Last year, I bought my first house. It was everything I ever wanted and more. 2 stories, a huge backyard, more than enough space for me to live with my family, once I finally got married and settled down. The price was cheap, suspiciously cheap actually. I worried that there were issues with leaks or mold or something, but the realtor assured me that nope, everything was as it seemed. Nothing strange happened when I moved in. That didn't start until 3 weeks later, after I moved in all my stuff. I had a couple of friends over for a little housewarming party. We were drinking and playing games in the living room when my friend Rudy absolutely freaked out. His glass fell out of his hand and shattered onto the ground. What's wrong? Do you see that? He was pointing at the window, but when I looked, nothing was there. All I saw was my backyard through the foggy glass. Rudy swore up and down that he saw something outside. He didn't say what it looked like, just thought it was big. I couldn't tell if he was messing with me. I didn't have a lot of plants in the backyard. There were patches of dead grass and some gnarled little trees, but my whole property was on a section of land that seemed kind of barren. I doubted that I had any animals back there. Well, I cleaned up the broken glass and gave Rudy a new drink. We tried to restart our game, but the vibes were off. My friends all ended up leaving earlier than they expected. When I was alone, I went over to that window and just stared outside, trying to figure out what Rudy had seen. I didn't see anything that night, but I did feel a change in temperature. There was a strange warm spot right in front of the window. A few days later, I started noticing other things. Crackling noises under the floorboards. A strange, steady thump behind the walls. Random warm spots in different parts of the house. There were plenty of rational explanations for all of it, but that didn't stop me from getting spooked. And then I saw the handprints. I was watching TV in my living room when I noticed something through the kitchen window out of the corner of my eye. A faded, gray handprint appeared on the glass. Then another. It looked like someone was outside trying to get in. Who's there? The handprints disappeared. But then more handprints appeared on a different window. Standing in the middle of the living room, I spun around trying to look at all of the windows. And sure enough, each one of them had handprints that came and went. I nervously walked up towards one of the windows and saw a handprint appear right in front of my face. And up close, I could see that there was no one on the other side of the glass. No one to make the handprint. This had no logical explanation. I switched on all the lights and locked all the doors. I pulled out my phone and started to dial 911. And then I stopped myself. The police would just think I was crazy. I called the realtor instead. Hello? Who is this? There's something about my new house that you didn't tell me. The realtor got quiet for a long moment, and then he took a deep breath and apologized. He said that I wasn't the first person to experience strange occurrences at this property, and that's why the house had been so cheap. I demanded that he tell me everything he knew. He slowly explained that before the house was built, there was a circus on this property. It was a small one-ring circus that specialized in animal acts and stunt work. This was way back in the 20s or 30s. The realtor wasn't entirely sure of the time period. Well, back then, the circus had 2 star performers, Clara and Ethan. They were trapeze artists. Audiences enjoyed all the performances, but Clara and Ethan were the real draw. People came from miles around to see them walk the tightrope and swing through the air in their elaborate routines. The circus owner paid them well and made sure that they were happy. And then Clara discovered that she was pregnant. As a couple, they decided to leave showbiz behind and start a family. The owner refused to let that happen. He told them that he supported their decision, but before one of their rehearsals, he manipulated Clara's swing, causing her to fall. He didn't want Clara to die, he just wanted the fall to fix her baby situation. Unfortunately, she missed the net completely. She died on impact. Ethan was horrified. He knew that the owner had sabotaged her rope. More than that, he knew that the other performers at the circus were aware of the plan. Now, whether that was true or not, we'll never know. But seeing his wife's tragic accident filled him with pure anger at the entire circus. He left for the hospital, vowing to never return. But he did return. That weekend, during the first show without the trapeze artists, with over 100 people in the tent, Ethan freed all the animals, blocked the exits, and set the tent on fire. No one escaped. Ethan was never seen again. He might have fled, but people say he just walked into the fire, and the spot where the circus burned was left abandoned until developers built a house. My house. Well, that was the story, anyway. Now, a week ago, I wouldn't have believed it. But I saw the gray handprints with my own eyes, and I knew that they were from the victims of the circus fire, forever trapped in the flames. I ended the call without saying anything. What was I supposed to do? I'd sunk my life savings into this house. It was perfect. But the bad energy that surrounded it was too much. I couldn't leave, but I was too afraid to stay. I couldn't sleep that night, or the night after. Eventually, Rudy came over to visit. I told him everything, and he believed me. He was the one other person to see the ghosts. Let's call a priest. Rudy was Catholic. I wasn't. Couldn't think of a better solution, though. So, that afternoon, Father Matthew came over with incense and holy water. Rudy and I followed him around the house as he cleansed each room. Nothing felt different afterward, but ever since then, the haunting stopped. No more strange noises. No more handprints. My life went back to normal. The house turned into the prime hangout spot for all my friends. And over the following months, I forgot about the ghost stuff completely. I'm in a relationship now. I'm dating this great girl named Jade. Last week, she told me she was pregnant. It was the best news of my life. I'm finally going to start a family. But just this morning, I was making her breakfast in the kitchen when I heard her scream from upstairs. I ran into the living room and I found her clinging to the banister at the top of the stairs. Something pushed me! I almost fell! I ran to her and held her tight, making sure that she wasn't hurt. Now, I don't know if it was just some strange accident or if the ghosts are back. I'm terrified that Jade will suffer the same fate as Clara. What should I do? My name is Jennifer, and I was an idiot. It was 2 years ago when Caleb and I signed the papers on the foreclosure. We were young and optimistic, but optimism doesn't stop a screwdriver from prying open a window frame at 2 in the morning. The night it happened, the humidity was stifling. Our AC unit was on the fritz again, another joy of home ownership, so the air in the bedroom was thick and heavy. Caleb was pulling a double shift at the plant, leaving me alone in the creaking, settling skeleton of a house. I was lying in bed. An ID channel marathon was running. I know, the irony isn't lost on me. I was half dozing, listening to a narrator describing a grisly murder in Wisconsin, when I heard it. My eyes snapped open. The sound came from right beside me. Our bedroom was small, forcing the bed against the exterior wall. The window, an old single-pane sash window that rattled in the wind, was less than 12 inches from my ear. Damn squirrels, I muttered, rolling onto my back. We had a massive oak tree that overhung the roof. The rodents were constantly treating our shingles like a runway. I closed my eyes, trying to force myself back into the drift. That wasn't claws on wood. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. I stared at the ceiling fan, straining my ears against the drone of the TV. God damn it. It's stuck. The voice was a low, raspy mumble. It was male, and it was right next to my head. Adrenaline dumped into my system so fast it made me nauseous. It wasn't a squirrel. Squirrels didn't curse. Someone was standing in the flower bed outside, working a tool under the lip of my window frame. I scrambled backward, tangling myself in the sheets, and hit the floor on the opposite side of the bed. I didn't think, I just reacted. "I have a gun!" I screamed, my voice cracking but loud. "I have a gun and I'm calling the cops! Get the hell away!" I didn't have a gun. I had a heavy brass lamp and a cell phone, but he didn't know that. The scratching stopped instantly. Silence. My hands were shaking so bad I dropped my phone twice before I dialed 911. 911, what is your emergency? Someone's trying to break into my house. I'm at 402 Elm. Please, he was at the bedroom window. Is the intruder inside the house, ma'am? No. No, he stopped when I screamed, but he's out there. Okay, I have officers in the area. Stay on the line with me. Are you in a safe place? I'm in the hallway. The doors are locked. The wait felt long, but it was probably less than 4 minutes. I watched the front door, waiting for it to be kicked in. Every creak of the floorboards sounded like footsteps. When the blue and red lights finally washed over the living room curtains, I nearly collapsed with relief. 2 officers met me at the door. You said he was at the bedroom window? The older one asked, shining his flashlight into the yard. Yes, right there. I heard him talking. He was cursing. They walked the perimeter. I stood on the porch, hugging my arms, feeling exposed in my oversized t-shirt. The neighborhood was dead silent. No dogs barking, no cars, just the hum of the transformer on the pole. They came back around the corner, shaking their heads. Ma'am, we didn't see anyone, the older officer said, clicking his light off. No footprints in the mulch, but it is pretty dry out here. You sure it wasn't the tree branches? The wind is picking up. I felt the heat rise in my cheeks. It wasn't a tree. Trees don't talk. He gave me a look. The look that says, hysterical woman alone at night. Right. Well, we checked the yard. It's clear. Probably just a prowler who got spooked and ran off when you yelled. You did the right thing. You're leaving? I asked, my voice rising. We can't stay, ma'am. Unless we find someone.
Fire Patrol's on way.
Just then, the radio on his shoulder crackled to life. Dispatch to Unit 4 Alpha. Break-in in progress. 408 Elm. Resident reports intruder forcing the back slider. The color drained from the rookie's face. That's 3 houses down. Go! See? I told you! They didn't say goodbye. They sprinted to the cruiser, tires screeching as they peeled out down the street. I slammed the front door and threw the deadbolt. I checked the lock 3 times. Then I checked the back door. Then the windows. I went back to the bedroom to get my phone, but I couldn't stay in there. The window felt like a gaping eye. I grabbed the duvet and dragged it to the living room couch. I dialed Caleb. Jen? Everything okay? He sounded exhausted. No, it's not. Someone tried to get in, Caleb, through the bedroom window. What? Are you hurt? Did you call the police? I'm fine. The cops just left. They didn't believe me until a call came in from the neighbors. Caleb, I'm terrified. Please tell me you're coming home. I'm leaving right now. I'm clocking out early. Him. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Stay on the phone with me. Please, just talk to me. I'm right here, babe. I'm getting in the truck. Lock the doors. They're locked. I checked them twice. For the next 15 minutes, we talked about nothing. He described the traffic. I described the show that I had been watching. Anything to fill the silence in the house. Every shadow in the living room looked like a man standing there. Okay, I'm turning off the highway. I'm almost there. Thank God, I whispered. I sat up on the couch. Our backyard had a wooden ramp leading up to a shed where Caleb kept his tools. It was right next to the back door. The wood was old and warped, and it made a very distinct, hollow thud clump sound when anyone walked on it. Oh, thank God, I said into the phone, letting out a breath I'd been holding for an hour. I hear you. You're on the ramp. What? Caleb asked. I hear you on the back ramp. Hurry inside. I'm unlocking the door. I pulled the phone away from my ear and went to hang up. Jen, don't! I put the phone back to my ear. What? Jen, listen to me very carefully. I'm at the traffic light on 5th. I'm not in the neighborhood yet. The blood in my veins turned to ice water. The world tilted on its axis. The footsteps were at the top of the ramp. They stopped right outside the back door. Oh my God, I whispered. Oh my God, Caleb, he's at the door. Get out of there. Get out of the house now. I can't. The front door takes too long to unlock. I dropped the phone. I didn't care about the call anymore. I backed away from the kitchen, staring at the doorknob of the back door. It rattled. Just a gentle jiggle at first, then a violent twist. The wood of the frame groaned as a shoulder slammed into it from the outside. I ran to the kitchen drawer, fumbling blindly for a knife, anything sharp. I grabbed a steak knife, clutching it with both hands, shaking so hard I nearly cut myself. Police, open up! The shout didn't come from the back door, it came from the front yard. Sirens wailed, cutting through the night air, loud and close. The pounding on the back door stopped. I heard the sound of boots running down the ramp, followed by shouting in the backyard. Freeze! Get on the ground! Show me your hands! I sank to the kitchen floor, the knife clattering out of my hand. I curled into a ball, sobbing, unable to breathe. Minutes later, or maybe seconds, time was broken. Caleb burst through the front door. He didn't even shut it behind him. He found me on the kitchen floor and scooped me up, burying his face in my hair. He was shaking just as hard as I was. I've got you. I'm here. I've got you. Outside, it sounded like a war zone. Radios, shouting, dogs barking. We eventually went out onto the front porch. The street was lit up like a disco with police cruisers. They had a guy in cuffs leaning against the hood of the car. He looked like a skeleton with skin stretched over it, sores on his face, eyes wild and darting. He was twitching, muttering to himself, his head bobbing rhythmically. The older officer from earlier walked up to the porch. He looked exhausted. You okay, folks? Is that him? Caleb asked, his arm wrapped so tight around my waist it hurt. Yeah, that's him. We call him Smoke Whiz. He's been hitting houses in a 3-block radius all night. Same MO. Tries the windows with a screwdriver, and if that doesn't work, he tries the doors. We've been one step behind him for 2 hours. I looked at the guy. He was staring at the sky, licking his lips. He was at my window, I said, my voice hoarse. Why did he stop? I screamed, but... The officer cracked a small, grim smile. Well, actually, ma'am, that's the funny part. You want to see something? He led us around the side of the house to the bedroom window. He clicked on his heavy flashlight and he aimed it at the ground. There was the screen, lying in the dirt, bent and torn. We got the screen off, the officer said, moving the beam up to the window frame. But look there. In the upper corner of the window frame, tucked between the glass and the brick mold, was a pulsating, angry gray mass. A wasp nest. A big one. He pried the screen off and he stuck his hand right into the hive. The officer chuckled. We found him with his left eye swollen shut and welts all over his neck. That cursing you heard wasn't because the window was stuck. He was getting lit up by about 50 of these little bastards. I looked at the nest. I hated wasps. I was usually out there with a can of Raid the second I saw one. But tonight, looking at those angry, buzzing stingers, I felt a strange surge of affection. He disturbed the wrong house, Caleb said quietly. Yep. The officer nodded, hitching up his belt. Between your scream and the wasps, he decided to try his luck down the street. Saved you a broken window, at the very least.
My name's Michelle. Last December, my long-term boyfriend Kai finally proposed. We've been together for years, but it still came as a surprise. Even though we loved each other very much, I knew that his mother didn't approve of our relationship. She grew up in Japan, and she wanted her son to marry a nice Japanese girl instead of an American like me. I said yes, of course. Kai was the love of my life. The day after our proposal, Kai took me to his mother, Miko, so that we could share the news. We were both pretty nervous about how she would react. Miko smiled as we told her, but I could tell that she was disappointed. Eventually, she said that she'd approve of our marriage if she could take a look at our palms. Miko was very superstitious, and she believed that the lines in our palms would tell if we were compatible. I didn't know if palm reading was part of her culture or if she was just using it as an excuse to split us up. I didn't want to show her my palm, but I also didn't want to upset the future mother-in-law. So the three of us sat at our kitchen table. Kai and I placed down our right hands on the table, and Miko examined the lines in our palms. After a long, awkward moment, she sighed and said, "I'm sorry, but this isn't a match. I will not approve of this marriage." Kai looked horrified, but he wasn't brave enough to argue with her. I wanted to say something, but Kai grabbed my arm and we left. On the car ride back home, I told Kai that we should just elope. I said that his mother would come around eventually. Kai didn't speak for a while. Then he smiled and said he had a plan. He explained that if his mother's only problem was our palm lines, then we could just change them. His cousin was a plastic surgeon, so I could go to him and get my palm lines redrawn. I'd never heard of this before, but apparently a lot of people in Japan get this kind of surgery. A surgeon burns a new line into the palm. I guess a lot of men do it to change their wealth lines, and women do it to change their love lines. Kai made it seem like it was a normal thing. No, I told him. I was a professional pianist, and I didn't want to do anything to mess with my hands. No matter how safe the surgery was, I didn't want to risk it, just because his mother was being difficult. I thought the conversation was over, but Kai kept begging me to reconsider. When we were back home, he showed me his cousin's website, which was full of testimonials from satisfied customers. The surgery was cheap and recovery time was just a few days. I loved Kai so much. Even though the idea made me very uncomfortable, I eventually gave in. Kai called up his cousin and scheduled my appointment for next week. As the surgery got closer and closer, I got more nervous. Every time I practiced my piano, I kept thinking about my poor hands. The website said that there was virtually no risks to the surgery, but I had this horrible feeling that something was going to go wrong. On the morning of my surgery, Kai left the house to go shopping for all my favorite snack foods. He wanted to pamper me after the operation. While he was gone, I went online once again to read about the recovery process, and I wanted to prepare myself. Because my laptop was having issues, I used Kai's computer instead. I read through his cousin's website one more time. All the information seemed reassuring. I was about to close the laptop when I saw that Kai's WhatsApp messages were still open. I knew it was none of my business, but something compelled me to look. I saw that Kai had been messaging his mother multiple times in the last few days. It was all in Japanese, so I couldn't read it. I knew that he would tell her about the surgery, so I figured that that's what they were talking about. Just in case, I opened up Google Translate and copied their last few messages into the text box. What I saw made me want to throw up. His most recent message was, "After today, I'll have the perfect housewife." I translated more of the messages and found out that Kai and his mother had planned to sabotage my surgery. He wanted to mangle my hands so that I'd have to give up being a pianist. I couldn't tell if this was Miko's idea or Kai's, but either way, he was willing to mutilate me just so I'd lose my career and become a dutiful housewife. I clicked on his WhatsApp messages to his doctor cousin. Thankfully, those were in English, so I didn't need to translate. Unlike Miko, his cousin sounded very uncomfortable with the idea of purposely botching the surgery. But I saw that Kai had agreed to pay him thousands of dollars. I'd never felt angrier in my life. I thought Kai loved me. How could he do this to me? He still hadn't returned, and my surgery was only a few hours away. I looked up his cousin's number and called him directly. I'd never talked to him before, but he seemed like a good guy who was forced into a terrible situation. I told him that I'd discovered it, and he begged me not to tell anyone. He said his practice was failing, and he desperately needed Kai's money. I thought about calling the police right then and there, but then I thought of another plan. I told him that I'd double the money if he gave me a different surgery instead. I'd use Kai's money, of course, enough to drain his bank account completely. We hashed out our plan right before Kai returned from the supermarket. An hour later, Kai drove me to the clinic. In the waiting room, I asked him one more time if he thought the surgery was safe. He looked me dead in the eye and told me that there was nothing to worry about. I smiled and said, okay. When the doctor took me into the operating room, he made Kai wait outside. Then he started the surgery, but he didn't operate on my hands. When I walked out to the waiting room with Kai, almost fainted. "Thanks for paying for the operation," I told him, "but I think we should see other people."